Hi. I wanted to talk to you about a book that impressed me very much that I read in the last couple of years. It's called Living the Sabbath by Norman Wirzba. This is the book. I would recommend reading it because for me it gave me a fresh look at the Sabbath and Sabbath principles. The reason I think I was even drawn to reading the book in the first place was probably triggered by a documentary, or not a documentary, a video that we saw featuring Walter Brueggemann called Countering Pharaoh's Production Consumption Society Today. Long title. Countering Pharaoh's Production Consumption Society Today. Brueggemann gave me new eyes to the book of Exodus in his presentation because he brought it to today, as applicable to today, Exodus. In a similar way, Wirzba here is talking about Sabbath principles and how we as Christians can live our lives with those principles in mind and what it does for us. So the book encourages you to think in terms of the Sabbath as not just something applicable to Old Testament, to the Israelites. If we think of Israel as having received revelation from God, having been rescued from life under Pharaoh, under Egypt, and brought into a separate community from the other nations to learn God's ways, that in itself should make it applicable to us. Because God took people out of a situation and brought them to a new situation where they could see His ways. And I think we all want to know what God's ways are for us, how we should live. The characteristic of life under Egypt for Israel was one of oppression and of violence to them. The characteristic of living under the covenant arrangement with God was a different one. One of the laws that He gave them was the Sabbath. Why was it given? What did it teach them? A number of things I see it as teaching, and which is highlighted in this book, is that by giving them a day of stopping working, it gave them time to slow down and to think on God, and to observe God's goodness, His hospitality to them, that He provides for them. It encouraged trust in God, and it encouraged them to be grateful, to have a gratitude for their connectedness to the earth and to each other, the gift of people. Where do we find value in life? Is it from the busy life that we're living, what we do for a living, how we work, or is it through God and what God has given us? Do we stop and observe what God has really given us? We live in a very affluent society, and yet people seem to be discontented, seem to be unsatisfied, even though we live in a world where instant gratification is all around us. It doesn't seem to be making people more contented. Maybe it's because I've retired recently, but I find a slower pace of life gives you time to be grateful, gives you time to think about things that matter. So I'd recommend it. The point of the Sabbath that was given to Israel was not just the one day out of 7. Just a rule for one day out of 7. The principles of Sabbath were something that encouraged the people to be thinking of it as the center of their life, as the climax of their week. There was anticipation towards the coming of that day and reflection of that day after. If we started to live our lives that way, I think it would improve our meditations on God and make us more connected with what He actually does and more grateful. Brueggemann makes the comment that let me just look for it here. He talks about Israel going from slavery to covenant, and that this is really a repeated journey of every generation. I'm not quoting him exactly, but that was the idea, is that every generation has to face this too. That we need to go from slavery to today's Pharaoh, whatever that Pharaoh is for us, to one of covenant with God. And Wirzba brings that same thing as Brueggemann does. He brings it to today's culture, how we can live the Sabbath. So I would really encourage you to read this book by Wirzba, and to look at anything you can find that Brueggemann does, because I find he's very interesting to listen to, and he'll give you fresh insights. Thank you.